The fate of the weak man in today's society. A Machiavellian perspective. Introduction. Niccolò Machiavelli, the Renaissance political philosopher best known for The Prince, had a stark and ruthless view of power, leadership, and human nature. In his writings, he emphasized that the world is governed not by morality or fairness, but by strength, cunning, and strategy. Machiavelli argued that those who fail to grasp power and assert their will inevitably fall victim to those who do. In today's society, the weak man, one who lacks ambition, courage, and strategic thinking, faces a grim fate. Modern society is structured in a way that punishes the weak and rewards the strong. The weak man is discarded in politics, business, social structures, and even romantic relationships. He is controlled by those who understand power and manipulated by those who use deception as a weapon. This essay explores the Machiavellian perspective on the weak man's fate in today's world, using historical, economic, social, and psychological examples. The nature of the weak man. Machiavelli believed that fortune favors those who are bold and strategic, while the passive and timid are doomed to be exploited. The weak man is characterized by his lack of ambition, fear of conflict, and inability to assert control over his life. Psychological and behavioral traits. The weak man is often indecisive, relying on others to make choices for him. He lacks the ability to take calculated risks, preferring comfort and security over the uncertainties of power and success. Machiavelli would see this as a fatal flaw. He believed that a man must be willing to take risks and seize opportunities with force if necessary. For example, in modern workplaces, the weak man remains stagnant, hoping for a promotion rather than actively positioning himself for one. Meanwhile, the cunning and ambitious climb the ranks through strategic networking, political maneuvering, and assertiveness. The weak man, unwilling to engage in these tactics, is left behind. The fear of conflict and confrontation. Machiavelli argued that power is maintained through fear, respect, or manipulation. The weak man, however, fears conflict and confrontation, which makes him an easy target for domination. Consider the realm of politics. Leaders who show weakness are quickly overthrown or disrespected, whereas those who wield power with authority maintain control. This applies not only to rulers, but also to ordinary men in social and professional settings. A weak man who allows himself to be constantly disrespected by his peers, co-workers, or even his own family loses credibility. No one respects a man who does not demand respect. Machiavelli would advise him to assert himself or risk becoming irrelevant. The economic and social fate of the weak man. Machiavelli understood that power is linked to resources, and in today's capitalist society, wealth is a primary source of power. The weak man, who lacks strategic thinking and ambition, is doomed to financial mediocrity or dependence on stronger individuals or institutions. Economic disadvantage and exploitation. In a world where financial success requires strategic planning, negotiation skills, and the ability to take risks, the weak man is at a severe disadvantage. He often settles for low-paying jobs, avoids entrepreneurial ventures, and fails to invest in his own skills. The ambitious and cunning, on the other hand, dominate industries, negotiate better salaries, and accumulate wealth. For instance, consider the rise of tech moguls and business leaders who seized opportunities that others ignored. While the weak man fears failure, the strong man embraces calculated risks and reaps the rewards. Machiavelli would argue that fortune rewards those who act decisively. Social and political irrelevance. The weak man is not only economically powerless but also politically and socially insignificant. In any power structure, from corporate hierarchies to social circles, those who understand strategy and influence shape the rules. The weak man, lacking both the will and the ability to navigate these structures, remains at the mercy of others. For example, consider the world of politics. Politicians who lack charisma, decisiveness, or the ability to manipulate public perception do not last long. The same applies to social settings. Men who fail to assert dominance in their friend groups or workplaces find themselves sidelined or ignored. The weak man in romantic and social relationships. Machiavelli recognized that human relationships, much like politics, are governed by power dynamics. A man who lacks confidence, assertiveness, and strategic thinking is often disregarded in both romantic and social interactions. The romantic fate of the weak man attraction is heavily influenced by confidence and the perception of strength. Women, whether consciously or subconsciously, are drawn to men who display dominance, leadership, and ambition. The weak man who lacks these qualities often struggles in dating and relationships. For example, dating apps and modern social dynamics have amplified competition among men. Women are presented with countless options, and those who exhibit strength, charisma, and social proof dominate the landscape. The weak man, failing to distinguish himself, is often overlooked or left in unsatisfying relationships where he is not respected. The weak man in male social circles, even among other men, weakness is a liability. Friendships and alliances are often built on mutual respect, shared ambitions, and strategic networking. The weak man, who contributes little and lacks confidence, is often excluded from high-value social circles. Machiavelli would argue that men must actively cultivate useful relationships and ensure they provide value, whether through intelligence, resources, or influence. The Machiavellian solution: strength through strategy. While Machiavelli acknowledges that some men are naturally weaker, he does not condemn them to failure. Instead, he offers a path to power through strategy, deception, and calculated aggression. Understanding power and influence. The first step to overcoming weakness is understanding how power works. Machiavelli emphasized that perception is just as important as reality. Even a man who is not physically strong can appear powerful through strategic speech, calculated actions, and confidence. For example, many successful business leaders, politicians, and influencers are not physically intimidating, but they command respect through their words and actions. The weak man must learn to control his image, speak with authority, and command respect through presence and competence. Embracing ruthlessness. When necessary. Machiavelli advised leaders to be feared rather than loved if they could not be both. This principle applies to all aspects of life. A man who is always agreeable, avoids confrontation, and seeks approval is easily manipulated. To avoid this fate, he must be willing to stand firm, set boundaries, and, when necessary, act with calculated ruthlessness. For example, in business negotiations, those who hesitate or show insecurity are outmaneuvered. The same applies in personal relationships. Men who fail to establish dominance and boundaries often find themselves controlled or discarded. The fate of the weak man in today's society. Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher, warned against the perils of weakness and complacency in individuals, particularly in a society that values conformity over strength. He championed the concept of the Übermensch, overman, a figure who transcends mediocrity, self-doubt, and herd morality to achieve greatness. Nietzsche despised what he called the last man, the passive, weak-willed individual who seeks comfort over challenge, acceptance over dominance, and stagnation over growth. Today, we see the last man in abundance, a product of modern society's overindulgence in ease, consumerism, and emotional fragility. The fate of the weak man in today's world is tragic, yet predictable. He is forgotten, discarded, and exploited. He is neither a leader nor a force of influence, but merely a cog in the machine of social complacency. This essay explores how Nietzsche's philosophy applies to modern weak men, using real-world examples and social trends to illustrate their inevitable decline. The nature of the weak man. The weak man is not weak in physicality alone, but in spirit, intellect, and willpower. He is the man who blames external forces for his failures, avoids responsibility, and seeks validation rather than self-actualization. Nietzsche believed that such individuals lack the drive to impose their will upon the world. resigning themselves to lives of mediocrity. The psychological weakness of the modern man. Modernity has fostered an environment where weakness is not only accepted, but encouraged. Participation trophies, safe spaces, and the demonization of traditional masculinity have created a generation of men who lack resilience. Nietzsche warned against the perils of victimhood mentality, stating that true strength comes from overcoming hardship, not avoiding it. For example, many young men today suffer from learned helplessness, blaming the economy, women, or their upbringing for their failures rather than taking proactive steps to improve. They remain trapped in cycles of depression, escapism through video games, pornography, or substance abuse, and resentment towards those who have succeeded. The economic fate of the weak man. A weak man does not innovate, lead, or take risks. He is merely a follower, forever dependent on institutions for his survival. In contrast, society rewards strength, intelligence, and perseverance. The ambitious man, whether an entrepreneur, athlete, or intellectual, is celebrated and compensated. The weak man, however, is trapped in low-paying jobs, unable to escape his financial predicament because he lacks the fortitude to demand more from himself and the world. Consider the rise of automation and artificial intelligence. As technology advances, unskilled labor is becoming obsolete. The weak man, who refuses to develop new skills, will find himself unemployable, surviving on government aid or charity. Nietzsche saw this as the natural order. Those who fail to evolve are left behind. The weak man in social dynamics. In relationships, friendships, and social hierarchies, the weak man is similarly discarded. Women, by biological and psychological nature, are attracted to strength, confidence, and competence. The weak man, plagued by insecurity and neediness, is undesirable. He becomes bitter, blaming women for his loneliness instead of improving himself. The romantic fate of the weak man. Dating in the modern era has exposed the weakness in many men. Apps like Tinder and Instagram have given high-status men access to a disproportionate number of women, leaving weak men struggling for attention. Rather than adapting and improving, these men become resentful, retreating into communities that reinforce their victimhood, such as the incel movement. Nietzsche would argue that this is the weak man's fate. His failure to command respect leads to his genetic and social extinction. Women, by nature, select the strongest mates. This is not unfair, but rather a fundamental truth of nature. The weak man's failure to evolve is his own doing. The weak man in social hierarchies. Social dominance is determined by confidence, competence, and assertiveness. Weak men, fearful of confrontation and competition, find themselves at the bottom of these hierarchies. At work, they are overlooked for promotions. In social circles, they are ridiculed or ignored. In politics, they are manipulated by stronger individuals who control them through fear and false promises of security. Consider how politicians and corporations prey on the weak. They sell false empowerment, promising that government programs or social movements will solve their problems. Meanwhile, the truly powerful take what they want, leaving the weak man placated with meaningless distractions. The Nietzschean solution. Overcoming weakness. Nietzsche did not advocate for the destruction of the weak, but rather their transformation. The weak man is not doomed if he chooses to cultivate strength. He must reject victimhood and embrace struggle, pain, and personal responsibility. Embracing the will to power. The will to power is Nietzsche's concept that true fulfillment comes from asserting one's will upon the world. This means rejecting comfort, facing challenges head-on, and striving for excellence. A man who embraces the will to power seeks to improve in every aspect, physically, mentally, and financially. For example, instead of blaming society for his financial woes, a man could learn new skills, start a business, or develop multiple income streams. Instead of lamenting his romantic failures, he could work on his physique, social skills, and confidence. The path to strength is open to those who are willing to walk it. Rejecting modern weakness society encourages weakness because weak people are easier to control. Social media promotes instant gratification, entertainment numbs ambition, and comfort kills the drive for greatness. The strong man must reject these temptations. Nietzsche admired those who lived dangerously, who took risks, embraced struggle, and pushed the boundaries of their potential. This is the way forward: discipline, ambition, and a relentless pursuit of self-improvement. Conclusion. The fate of the weak man in today's society is grim. He is ignored, discarded, and ultimately forgotten. He is manipulated by stronger forces, trapped in a life of mediocrity, and left behind by those who choose to rise. However, Nietzsche does not condemn him to this fate. He offers a way out. By embracing struggle, rejecting victimhood, and cultivating strength in all areas of life, a man can transform himself from the last man into the overman. Society rewards strength, not weakness. The man who refuses to improve is destined for failure. But the man who embraces Nietzsche's philosophy and takes control of his fate will rise above the herd and carve out his own destiny. The choice is clear: remain weak and perish, or become strong and thrive. The fate of the weak man is in his own hands. We control our destiny. Remember, we are in dissects.